Welcome to the Writer Groupie podcast. I'm Kim Smith, the writing guru, bringing you discussions, insights, and insider details on planning, producing, promoting, and profiting as a writer. This is a podcast by writers for writers. You can find out more about Writer Groupie at www.kimsmithauthor.com. And here's the next episode of Writer Groupie. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Writer Groupie. Tonight, my guest is Robert Williscroft, and Robert is the author of a recent release, I can't talk tonight, called Slingshot. And I want y'all to know I'm about 7%, which is not very much, into this wonderful book. It is fascinating. You've got to get this one, you guys. Robert, tell us about Slingshot.
Well, I'm going to start off 30 years ago when I was on my way to the South Pole to be isolated for 9 months. I picked up a couple of scientific papers on my way, and I read them during that 9-month isolation and was very excited because one of the papers, written by Keith Lofstrom, was about creating something called a space launch loop. And so when the poll opened up, I wrote him, and then we communicated back and forth, and it took a long time before we put the whole thing together, but finally in the mid-1990s, he and I got together, spent a couple of days, brainstormed the concept, and this book, Slingshot, is the result of that getting together back in the mid-1990s. Now, what Slingshot is about is a way to go into space without using rockets. Let me give you a description that Keith likes to use. Everybody's used a garden hose, and you've sprayed water out of the front of the garden hose and it forms an arc. And some people have taken the hose and started pushing it through their hands, and believe it or not, if the water is running fast enough, the hose will follow the arc and the water stream will hold the hose up. That's physics. True. Now, if you take the water stream and replace it with a tube of soft iron about 5 centimeters wide, and you make it about 5,000 kilometers long, and you drive it with mass drivers that are about 2,500 kilometers apart, and you stretch this out in the Pacific, like between the islands of Baker Island and Jarvis Island, which are the correct distance apart. As it begins to run and as it comes to speed, the entire contraption rises into the air all the way up to 80 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. Now, this is all real physics. It can be done with current technology and computer controls. And then from where this launch loop is above Baker Island and above Jarvis Island, you drop down what amounts to elevator cables, and then you can take a capsule and attach it to the cables and run it up at Baker Island, attach it magnetically to this fast-moving rail, which moves at almost 12 kilometers per second.
Oh, wow.
And at the appropriate time, let go of it, and it goes into low Earth orbit, high Earth orbit,
wow,
heads to the moon, or even to Mars.
Gosh.
Without rockets, except there is a small rocket called a kick thruster that's attached to the back of the capsule so that you can change your vector and things like that. This book is about the construction of this incredible machine, the largest machine in human history, the men and the women who have the dream, who have the ability, and put it together, and the guys who don't want it to happen. Wow. Misguided ecological terrorists, the same people who put spikes in trees.
Yeah.
These guys, they try to bring it down. And it's a tug of war between them throughout the book. And I won't tell the ending, but...
Well, I got to tell you guys, this is fiction, but it is really, really plausible fiction. It's so plausible, it's going to happen. Robert Williscroft's going to be famous one day. But it really is fascinating. I mean, the story starts out, the prologue starts out in the air, and then the first chapter goes to the sea, and you just handle it so well, changing settings, and those are pretty different settings. You just handle it so well. The reader, it's seamless. The reader is just carried along in this flow, and it's all your knowledge base. You just have a fantastic knowledge base. I'm so impressed. So, Slingshot is not the first book, though, right?
Well, no, it's not the first book I've written, not by a long shot, and it is not the first in the Star Child series. The first book I wrote was Star Child Compact, but it is the second book in the series. It is a sequel to Slingshot.
Okay.
So Slingshot takes place first, but Star Child Compact got written first.
Okay, so if somebody was going to start reading your books and following you, they would need to read Slingshot first.
I think, although they stand independently, it's useful to have read Slingshot first. Yeah, okay. I think so.
So is it available now?
It will be available the 15th of August. Right now, you can pre-order a Kindle version on Amazon at Kindle for 99 cents, no big deal.
Woo woo.
It will go to $3.49 on the 15th, which is still no big deal.
No.
And the book will be available hardbound and softbound. And you can go to CreateSpace and get it softbound, or you can just get it on Amazon. I like it when people go to CreateSpace because I get a larger profit.
Of course. We all do. I'm telling you,
seriously, the important thing is that the book get out and that people read it, enjoy it, and I think learn a lot from it.
I'm going to be fascinated to see the reviews that you get for this book. I've already read some of your pre-sale blurbs that you have in the front of the book, and everybody is just blown away with this story and the technology and the possibilities of what it could happen, what could happen with that technology in the future. So, off camera, you and I were discussing a short story that you've gotten together that goes sort of along the same lines. Why don't you tell us about that?
Okay. A couple of weeks ago, I was doing some research related to wingsuits. Most people know what wingsuits are. There's these crazy guys who put on these suits that have cloth stretched between their arms and their legs and between their legs, and then they jump off of cliffs or out of airplanes, and they fly around, and eventually they pop their parachutes and land. And as it so happens, one of the world's most famous wingsuiter managed to kill himself on the 15th of July. He and a friend were jumping off of, they were in Yosemite, and they had to get through a narrow slot. Something went wrong, and at about 200 kilometers an hour, they smashed into the rocks.
Oh, no.
And so that got me to thinking, this is an exciting sport, and it's a dangerous sport, and what would happen if somebody tried to do a wingsuit jump from the skyport at the top of Jarvis Island in the Pacific? The nearest island to Jarvis is Kiritimati, Christmas Island, where we had the hydrogen bomb test back in the 50s, and it's 379 kilometers, about north by northeast, and it's an amazing thing to try and do because the skyport is 80 kilometers in the air. So,
wow.
Now recently, one of the mucky mucks from Google, he jumped out of a balloon at 30. Let's see, how high was he? He was about 30 kilometers up.
Wow.
A long way. And he actually passed the speed of sound on his way down.
Wow. Wow.
So I got to thinking about this, and I did some research, and it turns out that there is a wingsuit, kind of, called Griffin, which has a far better drop to flight ratio than current wingsuits, and I said, well, what if we got this developed a little more, and the military got a hold of it and did some things to it, and I ended up with this story called Daedalus. Now, for those of you who are fans of mythology, Daedalus was the father of the guy who flew too close to the sun and crashed. So I named the story Daedalus, and it's the story of the jump leading up to, and then what happens with the jump from Jarvis Island. It should be coming out in the next few months in one of the science fiction magazines. Can't tell you which one yet. Fingers crossed for Analog, but we'll see where it comes out.
I really do want you to stay in touch with me and let me know how that goes, because it just sounds fascinating and it sounds like a really, really good story. And so I think Analog would be very fortunate to get that story. You also are going to be going to a special conference to speak, and I want everybody to know about this. This was fascinating.
Well, the Space Launch Loop is a subgroup of a category called space elevators. The basic idea of a space elevator, I guess, was developed with, goodness, I suppose you could say the Tower of Babel?
Probably.
And maybe Jack and the Beanstalk. What it is a way of creating an elevator from a geostationary satellite, cables that go down to the Earth, and all you have to do is just use an elevator to go up the cables. It isn't quite that simple, or we would have done it.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to have a cable that can carry its own weight, among other things, which we don't have yet. But there is a group of scientists, world-class scientists around the world, who've been working on this for some time, and their current conference, called the International Space Elevator Conference, will be in Seattle on August the 21st. And a feature at this conference will be Slingshot. Yay. It is being launched officially. The book will be sold there. There will be a big banner displaying it. I tried to put the banner behind me, but I didn't work. So anyway, there will be a big banner. But you have swag.
You were showing me your swag earlier.
Cool.
Yay!
Coffee will be sold along with the book.
I think that is so fantastic. I think that anything that we can do to really stand out, in any kind of a crowd as an author, and especially you, because you're like a professional speaker and you've got all this knowledge base, and man, it boggles my mind. So I'm just real proud for you about going to that conference, and I know you're going to have a fantastic time, and you're going to do it up right, as they say in the South.
What I would like to do is invite any of your viewers who are in the Seattle area on August the 21st, that's a Friday, and the Saturday and the Sunday. If you're in Seattle, come to the Museum of Flight. You can find it on Google easily enough.
Yes.
It's cool. There's going to be a contest where kids are going to create climbers to climb limited space elevators and see which group of high school kids or college kids makes the best one. It's going to be cool. A lot of fun.
It sounds like it. I'm just so excited for you. And if you get an opportunity to, maybe you could just be a guest on my blog at some point and just tell us how that came about and how it went for you, because I'd just love to know how it went for you, because that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. That would be
just
fun.
Keep in touch with me, and we'll just do a blog post about Robert Williscroft /Slingshot /the International Space Elevator Conference. I wonder if I can fit that all in a title. I'm always thinking SEO.
You can call it ISEC.
Oh, there you go. See? I knew you'd come up with a way to simplify it. Well, listen, something that I noticed when we chat about your work is that you're a famous what-if guy. A lot of your story structure is based on what if. I can hear it in your retelling of story material, is that you came up with this idea and then you went, what if? And it developed. And then you stopped and you said, and what if? And it developed. And it just fascinates me. Am I right? Is that how you produce a story?
Yeah, it's a major part of it. And an element that you sort of hinted at but didn't say is that I'm a scientist. I have a doctor's degree, a doctorate in engineering. I have undergraduate degrees in meteorology and oceanography, And I've been around the block, so I've got a lot of information and a lot of experience. And what I try to do is write a story not just about what if, but making reasonable scientific prognostications, not wild ones. And that makes a difference, and it makes the story very plausible.
It does. I agree. As a reader and a fan, I agree wholeheartedly. It can be called hard science, but it can also be considered science fiction because some of it hasn't really happened yet. Some of it came from your brain. Some of it is a what-if scenario. But it's based on actual scientific fact a lot of times, and that's what really lends credibility and supports the whole story, is the fact that everybody's sitting back going, wow,
Well, one of the incidents that takes place when the terrorists are partially effective is that it's necessary to bring the launch loop down to a certain level and then take it back up again. But while it's brought down, the elevator cables have to be reattached to it. And a Chinook helicopter, this is one of those helicopters that has the twin rotors on it,
right,
is used to bring this about. And so and I've flown in Chinooks a lot, but I had never done any research on Chinooks. And so I had to find out what's the maximum altitude that a Chinook can go to, and when it goes to that altitude, how much payload can it carry, how much can I put inside this thing, and what if there's a big wind blowing, what if things are happening, and how does that affect what it's going to do, and how long can it stay there, how much fuel is it going to take, and all of these things have to come together. Otherwise, some wise guy is going to do the math and write me a letter and say, that ain't right.
But really, I've read science fiction stories that were completely out there, and they didn't do any kind of research. They didn't do any kind of calculation to see if it was even plausible, could it even happen. They just wrote it as science fiction and just, really emphasized the fiction part of it. And so that's a great divider there between your common science fiction story and something like what you've written, where you've based it on, there's a lot of support there for actual fact, and you've done your homework and you've worked out the calculations, as it were, to make sure that it could happen.
I have notebooks filled with calculations and engineering drawings so that all of this comes together right.
Yeah. Speaking of drawings, I did notice as I was reading that you've got little drawings in the book. Slingshot. Did you do those?
Yes, I did, except for a couple that I got from Keith Lofstrom because he had them done professionally and let me use them. There were some things that were just too difficult to describe in words. It would become what's sometimes called a data dump.
Oh,
and
yeah.
everybody's eyes glazes over. And so what I did for just a few of those was put in a diagram to explain how all these pieces fit together. And I used the mechanism of having one of the technical guys in the company brief a news crew.
Hey, that's a good idea.
And this way the news crew and a real cute reporter, of course, and asks the appropriate questions and he answers them, and it all comes together that way. Without it being
and you're
just
educating your reader in the process, and it's done so seamlessly they don't even know it. I love it. I love being a writer, and I love having writers to talk to because we are such a clever bunch. We are, and I think I told you the last time, you've been on Writer Groupie before, and I think I told you the last time that I'm interested in trying my hand at science fiction. I've not done that before, except for one little short story that did get picked up by Diverter Publishing, but it hasn't come out yet. Just off the cuff, just wrote a little, sciencey kind of story, and they liked it, but I certainly did not go to any depths the way you have. And, as a reader, I really do appreciate the depths that a writer goes to make the story real for us. we gotta make it jump off the page. It's gotta be real, or somebody's gonna go, it's okay, but especially if they're from the science community or if they have any kind of insider knowledge, which I do not, but if they did, and you don't want them throwing your book going, that would never happen.
One of the interesting things that comes about because of that is a writer can get so involved with the technology that they forget what the story is about. A story has to be about people.
That's
and
true.
You have gotten into the book far enough to know that there's some chemistry there between Alex and Margo.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm not going to tell you where it's going, but there is chemistry between Alex and Margo. And Margo is this incredible engineer. She's in her 30s. She's stunning to look at. She's at the top of her career and has been picked over everyone else to do all of the underwater, manage the entire underwater part of this incredible project. So she has to be the best of the best. And yet, she's not at all sure that she is. And she's not at all sure that she's the one who should be doing this. And so you get a little bit of this inside her head and you begin to understand her uncertainties. And yet, what she expresses outwardly is none of that.
Right. She does exude a lot of self-confidence, even if she doesn't have it inside. So I'm telling you, you guys, I don't know how much of this story you'll get to looking at the Look Inside feature on Amazon, but it won't take you but that much, and you'll be buying the book. I'm telling you, it's a good book.
I should tell you one more thing. The lady, and you haven't really met her yet, who runs the show, who is in charge of the corporation that is building the launch loop, that is building Slingshot. Her name is Mabel Fitzwinters, and she is modeled after a hero of mine,
Aww.
Dixie Lee Ray. Dixie Lee Ray was the first chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission. She was the governor of the state of Washington. She was the director of the Pacific Science Foundation, and she was my zoology teacher in college.
Cool. Very, very
and
cool.
we got to know each other well. She is she's passed away. She was a marvelous, marvelous human being. And she's the model against which I used to create Mabel Fitzwinters.
Now you really make me excited to read some more. I can't wait. I got it for review, and I will be doing that for you. And you can count on a very good one. Already I can tell you it will be a good one because it's a very good story. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It can be filled with the hard, fast rules of science. It can be filled with, a plot that just zings every molecule of a scientist's brain. But it's got to be about people. It's got to have characters that somebody really wants to spend 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 pages with, however long the book is. And if we don't have characters that move and live and breathe on the page, it's kind of a dry read. So, and I can say yours is not.
Slingshot has a total of 69 characters in it. Some of them just pass through. Others keep coming back, and as they come back, you get to know a little bit more about them.
Yeah. And that's good because we want more books to come from Robert Williscroft. You could just take a few of those extra characters out there that you really didn't get a chance to delve into and just write us another story. We'll be terribly
Well, in
happy.
fact, the next book that's coming out, the third book in the series, is the Iapetus Federation, and it picks up where the Star Child Compact lets off. And the main characters in the Star Child Compact, they go off on a starship and are gone for the time being. And the story takes place in their absence, and it is some of these minor characters who assume major roles, exactly the way you just described.
That's fantastic. Great minds think alike, don't they? I'm fascinated. I'm just fascinated. You're creating an entire series of books based on this, this scientific element that I'm jealous. I'm just jealous. I wish I could do that. I'm going to have to really follow you closely, and I might just have to, maybe plagiarize a little. Kidding. Totally
They say
kidding.
that's the sincerest form of flattery, right?
That's right. If somebody wants to plagiarize you, you really did a good job. But is this book coming, the third, you're working on that now?
Yeah, I just completed chapter 3. It will have on the order of 33 chapters. Sometimes these things take a life of their own, and something will go in a different direction than I expect, but it's outlined for and follows through that way.
So you're an outliner, not a pantser, huh?
I take each chapter and summarize it, what's going to happen in the chapter, and I make sure it all hangs together. I lay out a timeline so that I don't have things happening when they couldn't be happening. And Jill, my wife and editor, she's an engineer, and she double checks my timelines, and she sometimes finds mistakes in them, and then we have friendly arguments and get it fixed.
Well, God bless that woman. That's all I can say. My husband and I do not go in the same realm with our creativity. He's my producer for the podcast. He's a video producer, editor, audio producer, editor, that kind of thing. He's all about the visual art. And so I don't have that situation where he's, critiquing me or reading me or editing me with the literary side. So that's a great opportunity that you have to have your editor with you as your wife. I mean, that must be very convenient.
Let me give you a little hint about what's going to go on in the Iapetus Federation. Okay. The bad guy in Star Child Compact was a jihadist stowaway on the spaceship that went to Iapetus and determined that Iapetus was a derelict starship. And he ends up leading a jihad across the planet, and the entire planet Earth becomes subject to Sharia law. And people are forced to change their faith and their beliefs and other things, or they get killed. And so there is mass migration away from the Earth out into the Iapetus Federation. Mars gets settled. Half of it becomes New Israel. The other half becomes New Texas.
Wow.
And other things happen. And what used to be the foundation of the free world, the United States, becomes, translates itself to the Iapetus Federation, and it becomes the foundation of liberty and freedom throughout our solar system.
Man, that's interesting because, wow, that's pretty timely too. There's a lot of talk about, the world being overrun by the terrorist element or whatever. So that's very timely, and you've put it on a kind of a spatial front. It's very good, very good.
It all starts with Slingshot.
It all starts with Slingshot. That phenomenal loop. Robert, it's been fantastic having you on the show again, and you're just a fascinating guest. I love it when you come on. You're always full of such great ideas, and you've got lots of books in you still, and I hope you'll come back. We'd love to see you for the next one, because we want to know what happens, You got readers, you got followers, and we want to, inquiring minds want to know, so.
I will be happy to. You know that.
Well, we're going to stay in touch, because I want you to do this blog post for me after you go to the conference. And of course, we're in the same tweet group, so I see you half the time anyway, so online, but.
I'll send you a copy of Daedalus so you can look at it.
That sounds great. Yeah, do that. I'd love to know. Hey, I'm a reader first and a writer second, really. So anything I can get my hands on to read, I'm a happy girl. So, in closing, is there anything you want to, tell the readers or the listeners of the show? I mean, like, if you got, website addresses and places you can be found online, anything like that you want to promote, knock yourself out.
Well, you can go to robertwilliscroft.com, and that will lead you to all the other websites. Each book has its own website, and I have a blog that I occasionally post to, and that's linked into robertwilliscroft.com as well. And I'd like to add another thing here, and that is that, and you know this very well yourself, we writers live by readers. And if you read something I've written and you like it, hey, tell the world about it. Leave a review.
Yeah. That's so important. Nobody but us as writers know how critical it is for us to get reviews.
It really matters.
It does. I mean, that's the only way we get any kind of ranking on any of these sites like Amazon, Goodreads, and places like that is the reviews and the ratings that you as our fan and follower give us. And if if you read our work, you like it, that's how you literally pay us. We don't make a living off the sale of a book. We make it off the sale of many books, a lifetime of books. And the only way we can keep turning them out and get anywhere with them is if you leave us a review. That's very, very important.
You got it.
I'm glad you said that. I'm very glad you added that in. That was important. So, but listen, it's been fantastic having you on Writer Groupie again, Robert. And I'm looking forward to having you back again real soon, whenever the next one's coming out.
You can expect it early summer.
Fantastic. We will see you then.
Nice talking with you.
It's good to talk to you too. Thank you for listening to this edition of Writer Groupie. For booking information, show notes, and more, visit kimsmithauthor.com.